this grant goes away and we go back to the system we had where students are paying, it is likely that students will be eating less food. I mean, it's just, it's not a free lunch anymore, and their parents have to pay, and they may not. So.
But they may also bring their own lunch.
They may.
I mean, I realize that we have a lot of low-income people here. We have a high percentage, which is why we get the reimbursement we get.
But I just want the board to think about this. I think we'll know sometime this summer, right, Ed, whether or not they 100% decide which way that they're going.
Absolutely.
But I think we should.
Unfortunately, we are required to pass the budget by June 30th, and they won't decide anything until after.
Of course, I'm not saying that we make a decision about the budget now. I'm just saying that
Think about it.
keep it in our minds and not forget about this come this summer, and we may wish to do things differently.
And do you know what percentage of our student population ends up being eligible for the free and reduced?
I believe in the middle school and elementary center, the percentage is over 45% of our students
Are either free or reduced?
are free or reduced. In the high school, it is lower than that.
Okay.
I think it averages out to about 40%.
Yeah.
And
I read that somewhere.
is part of the concern that there may be children who should be eligible for the free lunch and the parents don't apply?
So, yeah, so I think there's that stigma with the application.
Right.
And I hope to dispel that because apply for it.
Right.
I mean, the worst that can happen is it gets rejected.
Right.
All families that think they're qualified should apply for it. By any means, we want to feed as many children as possible.
No child.
Yeah, no child should be harmed.
Yeah.
You know, from a budgetary standpoint, it does have a negative impact on the food service performance. But obviously, that's not my concern with this. I'm more concerned with
Right.
kids going to get healthy because it obviously affects things like test scores and ability to pay attention in schools. And I think our teachers can probably attest to that. You know, I know our Backpack Buddies program with the help of Giant has been very successful in sending food home with students. But when COVID hit, they no longer had to do the application process.
Right.
So the concern is coming out of that, is everybody going to understand they have to go through that process again. Now, we didn't stop accepting applications. I understand some
But
districts
nobody
did.
needed to apply.
Right, nobody needed to apply, but we still accepted applications so that the process never kind of really broke. But I think coming out of it, we probably need to do a little PR and outreach to the community to make sure.
And is that part of our student community the ones who you're most concerned about here? Or is there also students who may not even be eligible for the free reduced lunch, but still they have challenges paying for lunch?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the cost of a lunch today, I mean, it's a real problem for every family. I mean, with the escalation of prices in grocery stores and gasoline, I think it's going to affect everyone.
Oh, I agree. I'm just curious who's going to be most affected and how much, and maybe I guess it's hard.
I think the other side of it is, because lunches and things are free, there's been more access. So now they come in and they can get breakfast and lunch and after school. So you're getting a much better nutrition than you would in a normal lunch day and an after school was lunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's obviously a concern.
Okay.
And then if everything goes to paid free and reduced, you know, is a student that would normally come in and get breakfast, and it might be better on his performance throughout the school day because he ate breakfast and he didn't get it home. And now he's got to pay for breakfast, and now he just won't do it because he doesn't pay for breakfast, and he's not getting fed at home. Is his performance going to suffer?
Right.
I think there's compound effects of the whole situation.
Right.
My ideal belief would be the federal government will make free and reduced free lunch for students across America for the remainder of times.
Right.
I don't know for the federal government. If we move on, continuing budget at a glance, there's slight adjustments for supplies and operations, as we mentioned, for fiscal year 22-23. The district has no major projects pending. Obviously, our elementary center is relatively new. High school and middle school were recently renovated. Revenue estimates for local, state, and federal funding. A 3% local increase due to property value increases, as reported by Carbon County, as well as a collection rate increase. A 3.9% state basic education funding increase, and an 18% federal ARP ESSER grant are included in the revenue estimates. Increases are included for salary and benefits, which constitute 64% of the district's budget, We are projecting similar numbers for cyber, charter, LAVA, DHA, our intermediate unit, and technical school enrollments. So that is 14.6% of budgeted expenditures. The budget does consist of one-time ESSER ARP purchases, which includes iPads, IT switches, district-wide access points for all of our computer equipment with an approximate price tag of $525,000. The ESSER ARP revenue will continue through 22-23 and into 24 fiscal year, at which time the district will need to make up the $1.9 million in revenue, of which $900,000 is a continuing expenditure.
This is an important point that we should think about. This is going to start hitting us when we're doing our budget 1 year from now. Like I believe it's next year, $900,000 reduction.
Right. Budget does include one-time salaries, as I mentioned before, for the ARP learning loss, which is required to do for the grant. So that's to get learning back up to speed from what was lost from COVID. Tim has already orchestrated a large portion of that over the summer with our summer academic camps. So that's where a good portion of that will be spent. And then obviously PSERS, the white elephant, rate increase of approximately 2%, which is a $401,000 gross expense increase for the district. We did hash out the staffing additions, which included 3 teachers, an elementary music teacher, a middle school reading teacher, or I'm sorry, a middle school reading specialist, a high school math teacher. And I know this one was up in the air and kind of debated the 10-month secretary of the middle school, but I did include it in the budget. It is included in the numbers. And then obviously comprehensive salary, PSERS, FICA, and healthcare for all of those individuals are added to the budget. So it's not the salary. So when it breaks down, your projected revenue of $44,583,599 and projected expenditure of $45,002,396 leaves you with a projected surplus or deficit of $418,797, and that is read at a deficit. So you're faced with the tough decisions. So to make those decisions, that's strictly up to the board. There are 3 options on the table. Option 1, probably the most unpopular, a tax increase of approximately $1 mil, which the average cost to the homeowner in Lehighton of $4.66 a month to cover that shortfall. We can continue to reduce or remove the added positions or further reduce non-fixed expenditures, such as supplies. Or option 3, we can utilize our fund balance to cover the deficit, risking future elevated tax increases.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
You gave the properties below the average and the properties above the average. Do you know how many properties are actually at the average? Or
That number was the total number of properties. So the average was right in the middle.
Right. The average is.
okay, so they're either above.
So if you add that, yeah, they're either above that or below that.
Okay, very sure of that.
Yeah.
So we have approximately 9,000 properties.
Right. And that was off of the tax file that I got from the county. So that was, I went strictly off the number of properties taxed.
And I believe it was in the previous one you gave the value of what an average.
Yeah, I remember it was $57,000, I believe was the average, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I can look it up from the previous one.
So let me just chat with the board here a little bit. So, we put together a budget that strove to try to keep a lot of things the same. And the concept is we're in a time of transition. We have an interim superintendent. He's just trying to, keep the boat, sailing forward until we can, hire our new superintendent. And that is the person who will be tasked with creating a new vision, and analyzing the status quo, thinking about things like curriculum and grants and whatnot. And, that's been kind of my attitude, is that, right now we're just trying to hunker down, get to that place where we have a new leader and a new vision, think you know that these are estimates, and that overage would come out of the fund balance. And our fund balance, it wasn't super obvious in this presentation, but our fund balance is over 8% right now. I mean, there are things we can do. We can assign money. For example, if we know that, you know, that the one ESSER grant's going to disappear next year, we could grab $900,000 and we could assign it to cover those costs, and then it becomes assigned, and now it does not appear unassigned, and then we have the option of raising taxes. You know, I'm of the disposition to not rock the boat, including with raising taxes. However, the difficulty is that, you know, next year, we'll have a new budget, we'll have new situations, and, you know, potentially we may have regrets, like, oh, I wish that last year we had raised taxes. My gut feel is that we will not find ourselves there, but there's a lot of variables, and it's pretty impossible to guess where we'll sit 1 year from now, but I'm optimistic.
Can I ask a couple questions, Stuart?
Sure.
Actually, Ed, about the fund balance. So you mentioned year end 2021, we were roughly 4.4 million. Am I correct in assuming if we move forward with no tax increase, we'd be projecting that fund balance would be about 400,000 lower at the end of 2022?
Correct.
Okay. And then I know the 8% is in our policy, and I believe it's also the state
No,
guide.
the state law is 8%.
The state law also.
5% is.
But then you also mentioned the GFOA recommends no less than 2 months of operating expenditures, which is, how do they recommend that if that goes against state law, or how do we balance?
Well, again, every
State law doesn't
has a
practice.
budget, so they're recommending what your typical, and, you know, my thought on that is they're trying to bridge the gap from spring to summer to get through summer on that 2-month expenditure window.
Right.
Because like I said, there's very little revenue that comes in July,
Understood.
August. Until you start, the state revenue cuts off in June. And if you don't have a sufficient